All right, welcome to Amtgard Leadership University's latest panel. This one is going to be dedicated all to the future of Amtgard. If you're in attendance, you'd know that the last panel talked a lot about the history of Amtgard. Where did it started from day one? And that brought us up to about the first 10 years of Amtgard. Now we're going to be talking about what does the next 10 years of Amtgard look like? Okay, with the adoption of the Amtgard International Board of Directors, the changes to the Circle of Monarchs, other revelations about burning lands and other events going on, the adoption of spring muster, you name it, it's on the table. We're going to talk about it, what it means to Amtgard, and exactly how Amtgard will be improved by us pursuing down that trail. As with every other Amtgard Leadership University panel, we're going to start things off left to right. We're going to start with Medryn. Give us a little bit about why you're on the panel, your perspective, what do you want to make sure we talk about today, and then we'll see where it goes from there. So, Medryn?
Hi, I'm Medryn. I'm here, I suppose, because I'm Amtgard International's attorney and have been working with them in terms of moving the organization forward and getting the organization developed so that we can actually have this new overarching organization for Amtgard. What I would like us to talk about is, I guess, kind of our plans, our short-term plans, and where I think that could lead eventually. Just sort of where we're going.
Hi, I'm Cord. I'm on the Amtgard Board of Directors, or Amtgard International Board of Directors. I am the treasurer. I am on this panel again for pretty much the same reasons as Medryn here, and that's that I'd like to kind of discuss where we are currently and what that potentially sets us up for. But I'd also like to use this as a place to say, where's Amtgard going to be in 10 years? I don't know. That's really up to Amtgard and what Amtgard wants to do. And I want to discuss that a little bit further.
Hi, I'm Brennan. I'm on the Amtgard International Board of Directors. I was the first executive for the COM committee. I founded the Circle of Monarchs in its current incarnation. Had a big hand in award standardization and everything else that we've done positive in the last 10 years. It's kind of an exaggeration, but I've been around for a lot of it. And I'm going to give some perspective on that and talk about where we can go from here.
So let's start it off. I know you did the Amtgard International Q&A on YouTube, and ALU is happy to try and help with the getting the word out there. But let's talk a little bit about that. So what is Amtgard International Board of Directors? Whoever wants to take that one.
Well, let's start with what it's not.
Got it.
Because that's actually a lot more defining than what it is. Amtgard International Board of Directors is not a governance system for kingdoms. It is not in existence to solve inter-kingdom disputes or to be people that you go to when you are unhappy with your monarchy. It is not a group that tells you how to run your kingdom. It is not any of those things. What Amtgard International is it is an entity that exists solely for the purpose of holding the properties of Amtgard. And in that case, that's the trademark for the name, the copyright for the rules, and the ownership of updating that process. And all of these sort of functional decisions are, by our own bylaws, farmed out to a subcommittee, which is comprised entirely of the Circle of Monarchs. So what is Amtgard International? It is a method by which the Circle of Monarchs, and therefore Amtgard, owns Amtgard.
Now, you said the Circle of Monarchs is a subcommittee, and I know we talked about it briefly in another panel, but in lay speak, how can it be a subcommittee of AI BoD, but AI BoD not still be in charge?
Medryn.
So, with some fancy footwork, is the short answer. Corporations have lots of different structures, and they have lots of different governance structures. But the hallmark of a nonprofit corporation is that there aren't shareholders. There aren't people who have a stake in the corporation. And all a corporation is a legal entity. You may have heard the Supreme Court rulings that corporations are effectively people. And as far as the law is concerned, they're people. They're allowed to own property. They have a multitude of rights. When you have a corporation, that corporation has to make a decision by somehow. In a nonprofit corporation, that's done by a board of directors. However, in designing the bylaws for Amtgard International, we're very conscious that we didn't want people who weren't beholden to the populace of Amtgard to be governing Amtgard. That's what we were moving away from. And so in order to do that, the board of directors exists to take the legal actions that are necessary for a corporation to exist, to specifically manage finances, to be able to execute, design, and sign contracts. And so they're necessary for that reason. But the way the bylaws have been drafted, that board's election is entirely up to the Circle of Monarchs, which is a subcommittee of the organization. And the reason that we didn't just make the Circle of Monarchs the board is that monarchy changes every 6 months. And to be honest, trying to have a board of 18, maybe soon to be 19, maybe in the next year 20, 21 people, where probably every 3 months someone is leaving that board and coming back on that board, it's impossible. It's not a method for good governance. So we needed a way to have a small enough group of people who could still get stuff done and meet and make those decisions. But we didn't want them to be making a whole lot of decisions without Circle of Monarchs buy-off. So almost everything the board does has to be done with Circle of Monarchs approval. For example, the bylaws were just amended so that currently the board of directors can't even change the corporate bylaws without the Circle of Monarchs saying, yeah, great, go ahead and change the bylaws. The Circle of Monarchs has a check on everything that the board of directors is doing. And the reason for that is the entire goal is to put the Circle of Monarchs in charge of Amtgard, but we have to have someone who legally exists to hold those property rights and to be able to make those decisions.
So how were you all, Cord, this one's for you, how were you all selected to be the first AI BoD?
So last year at the Circle of Monarchs meeting, this was kind of brought to a head, and there was a lot of discussion regarding the process. And the Circle of Monarchs voted to actually approve a committee that would start with creating the entity and would effectively be the first board of directors until the clan meeting here tomorrow. And at that meeting, everybody, well, Brennan and I at least, as well as the 3 other members on the board of directors who were selected by the Circle of Monarchs, we all put our basically names out there for the Circle of Monarchs to vote on and approve. So as kind of a short-term thing, the Circle of Monarchs basically voted for all of the members who are currently on the board to be the ones to implement that. And then tomorrow, we will actually, at the Circle of Monarchs meeting, there will be further discussion about electing an ongoing board moving forward.
So moving a little bit away from the AI BoD construct, unless there's something else. Okay. Brennan, tomorrow you're slated to talk a little bit about self-governance, kingdom self-governance versus national cohesion. Can you give us a little bit of a preview on what you plan to address the COM about?
Well, I could, but that would ruin the surprise and lessen my chances of completely taking over Amtgard, so I don't think that's really in my best interest. But what I can say is, theoretically, if I was going to title something like that, it would probably be a discussion about how much variance we want in implementation and adherence to the rules between different kingdoms. So for instance, what actually brought this up is Rising Winds has an unwritten rule, but a very stable policy of allowing everyone to play 6th level at events. So they have the normal credit system that they adhere to on their park days. But when you go to an event, you can play 6th level. And the discussion was, a lot of other kingdoms don't do that. Some other kingdoms do that. And that's one of those things where like, well, technically that puts you in violation of the contract because you're not adhering to the rules of play. On the other hand, if the majority of kingdoms think that that's okay, then we need to identify some way to allow that kind of flexibility while still having everyone be within the bounds of what you're contractually required to do to be part of Amtgard. So it's a discussion not just about that, although it stems from that, but the concept is, what does it mean to be Amtgard? What are the core things you must really do to be Amtgard? And where are the things that, for lack of a better term, as long as you're meeting your checks and balances, we don't care what you're doing around the periphery. So we don't want people enacting house rules for how lightning bolt works, but maybe we don't mind if you're allowing people to have 2 of every relic. There's just some weird things that need to be gone through and have a discussion about, and it's better to do it sooner rather than later.
It feeds on the, going to talk a little bit about the previous panel, where, I mean, Amtgard started as ultimately a handful of friends getting together, swinging sticks, literally sticks, and sometimes there was duct tape and foam added. And then suddenly it's a corporate organization. Do we lose some of that, for lack of a better word, purity, if you will, of just the backyard, almost like backyard baseball versus professional baseball? And do we lose the flavor of Amtgard? Is it getting lost in corporate decision making?
I don't think so. I mean, we still go out to the park on the weekends. We still hit each other with padded sticks. We still throw lightning bolts and fireballs and, and pretend to be, warriors or wizards or whatnot. I mean, the core of Amtgard is the same and unchanged. But the reality is we've grown from 15 people in El Paso having a great time on the weekends to 10,000 people playing, in any given month. That's huge. And I don't know if those numbers are exact. I mean, we'll hear more about that in the state of Amtgard, but it's somewhere around there. And the thing that I think is so valuable about National Amtgard is that we're really starting to form, and we have, I mean, over the past decade, we've really started to form a national society where we've moved away from, if you go across the country, you don't know how spells are going to work or what the interpretations are going to be and what it takes to get a knighthood. I mean, all of those things have changed and we've moved forward. Maybe we've lost a little bit of the backyard sense of things, but in reality, we're growing up a little bit. I mean, we're moving into a realm where we're not just a backyard game. We're a national game that has a lot of people, and that gives us the ability to bring in even more people. And, one of the things that Brennan said when we were, talking about why he was so invested in having good rules is that if you have good rules, you have more people that you get to hit with sticks because they're more interested. And that's the whole goal. But in order to do that on a national level, we have to have some national organization.
So obviously, with Tani and crew here from the earliest days of Amtgard, they've got a lot of hindsight and things like that. And Cord, you mentioned that the future obviously is up for Amtgard to decide via the Circle of Monarchs and individual players and how they align. But what are your thoughts whenever you think about what's next? Maybe even if it's just what's next for Cord in Amtgard, or what's next for your park in Amtgard, and then where do you honestly, and each one of you are going to hit this, where do you see Amtgard in 5 or 10 years? Pick a number.
Well, and like I said, there are definitely things that we plan on doing as far as the AI Board of Directors. And most of those revolve around getting Amtgard to a point where everything meshes, everybody's got contracts, we all are working together on the same level, and there's kind of a certain amount of harmony in how things actually work. But as far as where Amtgard goes in 5 to 10 years, I said it before and I'll say it again, I don't know. We're not up here dictating the terms of how Amtgard actually is going to work 5, 10 years down the road. That's not what we were hired to do. That's not our personalities. We don't want to be in charge of this. We want to help build up the structure so that Amtgard can govern itself and can move forward in whatever way Amtgard sees fit. So the Circle of Monarchs, as was mentioned, it really is the body that has sway over where Amtgard actually goes. And they're the ones that are really going to determine the future path of Amtgard. And so ultimately it comes down to, what does the Circle of Monarchs want? What does the populace of Amtgard that is letting their monarch know what to vote on, what do they want? And I can't really tell you that here.
Sure. It's hard to jump into that conversation after that one, so we'll move along. Other territory, Brennan, you were the brainchild, if you will, of Spring Muster, as best I can tell. Was it a success? Can you elaborate a little bit, first off, on what is Spring Muster, and then did it meet at least your intent? And then is it going to continue?
Spring Muster is an activity where we encourage people to sort of come out of hibernation from the winter. A lot of parks, especially in the northern areas, they stop playing or they play infrequently during the cold seasons. We understand that happens, and that's fine. That's just the way it is. What we want to do is we want to make an effort to get them out of hibernation, to reactivate their previous players so that no one misses from fall to spring, not coming back out to the park because they just got out of the habit. And then we also want to drive new recruitment and having a period of excitement where we get new people to come into the game before event season, because I firmly believe that once you get people out to an event, they're likely to be hooked for an extended period of time. So we want to create a situation where they're in at the start of event season so they have a maximal opportunity to attend a lot of events and become suckers for me to profit from for years to come. So that's what everyone believes, right? Just check. So is Spring Muster successful? Yeah, I believe every kingdom participated, and every kingdom that did so, we've got some pretty good metrics on, and they all saw growth and reactivation over the same period last year. That's good. Can we quantify how meaningful it was? No, we can't, because the data isn't there yet. The data will be there next year when we've done it again, and we will be doing it again next year. I think it was very successful this year. We ran into road bumps from an organizational standpoint just because I got very, very busy right at the time when Spring Muster was kicking off, and that was unfortunate. But now that we've sort of figured out where the bumps in the road are, we can bring more people into it and really get that moving forward in a more timely and professional way. And we're definitely going to do it again, and I was definitely happy with the results.
On the mindset of kingdoms and lands working together, common goal kind of deal. And again, some of these I just got to throw out there because I don't know where individual interests lie. But has there ever been considerations that you're aware of, or any effort behind considerations towards like a game-wide campaign beyond just events, to where maybe there is a larger storyline, maybe there is some greater RP backdrop? I think it gets talked about in its pockets. Do you see that even coming to fruition?
I think the Phoenix League guys are doing something that's kind of like that. You know, I wouldn't say that it's necessarily RP based, but they are running what you'd consider a national competitive small battle game system throughout all of Amtgard, and it's opt-in, obviously, as it should be. But, you know, I don't think that stuff gets planned very well from the top down. I think that's things sort of popping up as an experiment in one kingdom and spreading to another, much like the Phoenix League has. I think that's the way to go, you know. Much like our 50 states are individual experiments in freedom, you know, our 18 kingdoms are individual experiments in what works and what doesn't in terms of having fun at Amtgard. So I don't think you'll ever see anything like that planned from the top down. It's not impossible, but it's unlikely. But I'd really like to see more of that stuff come from the bottom up and spread.
Okay.
And I'll just pop in. I think it's a great idea. I think it's really neat. And as I often do when somebody comes to me and says, hey, there's this really cool idea, my general response is, yeah, that's a really cool idea. You should do it. And not necessarily you, Goldcrest, but
I always say
No, Goldcrest.
No, Goldcrest should do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But what I mean is, you know, there are absolutely ways for people to leverage this national organization that we're building, and for kingdoms to say, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could start getting, you know, getting overarching role play involved, and that's something that would be neat, but it's going to have to come, as Brennan says, from the bottom down. I don't see the Circle of Monarchs saying that's going to happen. I mean, I think we have a pretty good example of that with the Emerald Hills and Rivermore doing Known World War recently, where they really teamed up as two kingdoms to do some fun RP kind of about what the event was about, but also putting on a great event. You know, Tal Dagor and Rising Winds did have done that with Keep on the Borderlands pretty successfully. So certainly seeing things like that spread, I would love to see more inter-kingdom cooperation on events and storylines and quests and that sort of stuff. That would be great.
Do you think that'll be the future? Obviously, Keeping the Borderlands, very successful. No More War came out as one of the top events this year, last year, over the last 12 months on its inaugural event. Do you think more joint activities like that will be in the future?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think Amtgard has reached the size that kind of the SEA has reached in a lot of ways, in terms of it is no longer practical, desirable, or useful for every kingdom to have its own special thing. So what you're seeing is economic forces in terms of attendance from players and their ability to spend money and their ability to get time off come together to create more quality events with higher attendance that are less frequent and are held between more groups. So you get Keep on the Borderlands, you get Known World War. Clan, which is a truly inter-kingdom event, and it was the original, is the same thing. You know, I don't think any one kingdom here has a massively outsized population relative to the others in terms of attendance. And I think that that's the trend that we'll see moving forward. And I think the concept of having a small regional event will still happen every 3 months, or however often your kingdom does them for governance and running them purposes. But I think we're going to see more and more of the large events become joint efforts.
Were all three of you on the V8 rulebook team?
Yes.
Can we talk about it just a little bit, not about the rulebook, but about the process? Because all of a sudden, there seems to be this trend that there's just an assumption that there's another rulebook that's being written, and that, so all these changes need to be implemented. And well, every 10 years we change them, so the next change needs to, somebody else needs to carry this monkey, if you will, and do it. So can we talk a little bit about what drove V8, and then what, if anything, will drive V9, and who creates V9? Cord, because Cord's been quiet.
So what ultimately drove V8 was primarily Brennan getting a group of like-minded individuals together to say, V7 has gotten to the point where there are so many aspects of it that are broken and potential to be abused, that sort of thing.
And not fun.
That Amtgard has become not fun. People do not play V7 the way V7 was written. The idea of a certain number of lives shatter battle, which is what V7 was entirely predicated on, was just not feasible for the vast majority of Amtgard groups. And so it was a number of us getting together and kind of visualizing what we actually wanted to see as far as a rulebook moving forward was concerned. What aspects of V7 did we like and want to retain? What aspects had appeared problematic to us? And we kind of built a roadmap for what our thought process was for that. And we then took that roadmap to the Circle of Monarchs, and we said, look, these are the issues that we see with V7. These are things that we believe we can fix. And we asked the Circle of Monarchs to approve actually making the V8 committee an authorized group to go ahead and rewrite the rules and come up with a new system, more or less from the ground up. And then the Circle of Monarchs requested that the rules rep organizer, Medryn, be involved in that process. And that's effectively what really created the V8 committee. As far as the process of how the rules came into fruition, we really did it in an incremental approach, where we started out with kind of the base concept of what we actually did, combat. Okay, let's go ahead and lay out the combat system. Let's make sure everybody's on the same page there. All right, let's move from that on to like the concept of militia. What do we need there? We need to have weapons. We need to have armor. And there were some knockdown drag-out fights between our group about what would actually be the end result from that. And we went through, I don't know how many different iterations. I've had people come up to me after the fact and say, the armor system's broken, we need to do this. It's like, so we actually looked at that, and we went through probably 20, 30 hours of arguing over that process, and we found all of these different potential issues with it, which is why we didn't actually go through that or go with that. Most of our discussion was on ESAM, and that I think was probably one of the most active forums that ESAM had. This was right when ESAM was still actually being pretty regularly utilized. And so we were just on there all the time, going through pretty much every iteration. Once we actually did combat, then we started releasing the melee classes, then we started releasing the magic classes, and then everything got out there. And we started into the playtest period, where we basically had everybody go in there and say, all right, how broken is everything that we just threw out here? Okay, how do you break this? What can you do? That sort of thing. And eventually everything came back, and we started revising those rules to be able to incorporate that feedback. And then eventually we got to a rules system that seemed relatively break-proof from all of the feedback that we were actually receiving. And that's eventually what was passed to the Circle of Monarchs to vote on. There are certain aspects of that I've kind of glossed over, but that's kind of a general concept of how the process began or started.
So Brennan, how do we get to V9? Is there a V9, and who drives V9?
Well, I don't have any plans to do V9 currently, so it's not me. If V8 gets to the point where I'm no longer having fun playing it, I'll write a new rulebook. And I'll go through the same process I went through previously, which is like, these things irritate me about the current rules, so I'm going to fix them. And if you guys like the product, we can keep moving forward with it and we can adopt it. If you guys don't like the product, then you can scuttle it and nothing changes. And that's what I'd really like to stress. is that it's a group of people working to get something done, and it doesn't have to be official in any meaningful way. It's really just, I've seen these problems, I'm going to take my thesis for how to fix them to the Circle of Monarchs. The Circle of Monarchs says we are or are not interested in that. I work on the process to get it built and released, and then at the end I've got something I can send to the COM and they can adopt it or not. Now, you don't have to be me or Medryn or Cord to do that. Anyone could do that. So who could write V9? You could write V9. Any of you could write V9. You just do it. It's not even a complicated process. It's really just one foot in front of the other for like 2.5 years.
I mean, sorry.
It's a long process. I mean, you know, I think we had 3.5 years of playtesting essentially of V8.
Something like that.
But the question of how does V9 come about? I mean, let me say this, and this isn't just tooting our collective horn, but V8's a real solid system. It's a real adaptable system. It's a real flexible system. The reason that we needed V8 was because V7 didn't match the way that Amtgard was playing Amtgard anymore. The game had changed even though the rules hadn't. If we get to that point, I feel like that's going to be the point that we'll need V9. Is that point ever going to happen? I don't know. I don't see it happening next year. I don't see it happening the year after that. But if somebody else disagrees with me, more power to you. Find the things that annoy you, find the things you feel like you need to be fixed, and tell the Circle of Monarchs that you'd like to try and take a shot at fixing them. But I feel like right now, V8 is a good system for Amtgard, and we don't necessarily need to be looking to change the rules quite as often as people want to. And it's not just because, I mean, change fatigue is a real thing, right? People get sick of the rules changing every year, or they just do. But beyond that, I don't know that change for the sake of change is not necessarily something we need to shoot for. So if there are problems, by all means, let's fix them. But otherwise, let's not necessarily look for the next new shiny. Let's find fun ways to do, with what we have.
Brennan, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I did. Cord, did you want to say something first?
I wanted to take a little segue, so go ahead.
Okay. I think, and again, this is from my perspective, and I'm involved with it, but I was also involved with V7, and I thought that sucked real bad. So, much like he said, I think V8's really pretty solid. I think in terms of swords and sorcery, sport-like, medieval fantasy recreation combat, the V8 rules are probably about as solid as you can get for that genre, for what we're doing. Okay? If you're doing Ifgis or Nero or Alliance or Dystopia Rising, those are totally different, and they don't fit our genre of what we do, so those rules would be completely different. I think we're pretty solid for what we do. So in terms of what would cause us to do V9, I think it would be something very disruptive to how that genre behaves in general. So for instance, just as a sort of pie in the sky example, if we keep heading towards where we're going with technology, and technology becomes even cheaper in terms of like gyroscopic motion detection and GPS tracking and stuff like that, you might end up seeing, 10, 15 years from now, a situation where, well, everyone has the ability to cast spells through their smartphone, and smartphones are largely indestructible at this point. So instead of throwing spell balls, we're instead going to do, essentially Pokemon Go with our phones and cast spells like they're wands. It would be something like that, something that we can't even necessarily envision now. And that's the point. We did V8 to the best of what we have and what we could envision. So as soon as something that we could not think of or anticipate comes out, that's when you'll see a push for a new rulebook, and that's what it should be, encompassing the new things that are possible.
Okay. Cord, you wanted to?
So the reason I wanted to segue is kind of getting back to the concept of the future of Amtgard, and the fact that I don't know where that is. What Brennan did with regard to the V8 rulebook is a roadmap for anybody who actually wants to influence the future of Amtgard. Okay, if you have an idea and you think it's a good idea and you believe you can build consensus for that idea, you can do that. You don't have to be Brennan. You don't have to be Medryn in order to be able to get these things through. You just have to have a good idea. You have to have the ability to build consensus and get other people to agree with your idea, in particular the Circle of Monarchs to agree with your idea, and then lay out a detailed plan for how to actually get there. Okay, so if any of you have any interest in actually being part of the future of Amtgard and building that, just follow that sort of roadmap, follow that sort of process.
Well, and it's not just V8 that gives you that example. Every substantial step that we have taken in making Amtgard better in the past 10 years has come about exactly that way. Someone has said, hey, this is a really great idea. I think we should do it. And taken it to the appropriate people and gotten buy-in. So you've got the creation of the Circle of Monarchs as a governing body. You've got the V8 rulebook. You've got the Amtgard International BoD, which was Kaliana saying, hey, maybe the Burning Lands doesn't need to be doing this forever, and maybe this is a lot of work that we could, give to the rest of Amtgard and get some help with. And she brought it to the COM and she sold it. Goldcrest saw a need for an ombudsman program and said, hey, I think I can do this. I think I can get this program started. Brennan? Okay, again, Brennan. Brennan just tapped Goldcrest to do it. ALU, this program that we're doing happens because...
That was Goldcrest.
That was Goldcrest. Okay, good. I was going to be really upset if that was Brennan too. Damn it. All of those things happen because somebody says, hey, there's a need here. This would be cool, and they got buy-in, and they did it. And that's what we want all of our players to be doing. I mean, we are so much stronger because we have so many people who have such great ideas. All you have to do is convince other people that it's a great idea too, and make it happen. And it works.
By the way, thank you for proving me right that you don't have to be Brennan to do that. I appreciate that.
Right.
I will tell you, it actually spurred from a conversation with Brennan.
Damn it.
Well, I will give him total credit. He's the one who kind of motivated me to get off my tail and to do something.
Food fight?
So, maybe me?
Not me. Definitely.
Not Brennan.
Yay! Woo! We have a winner. All right.
I don't even believe in sharing.
And yet he supports Amtgard Food Fight. But Brennan, you had something to add?
I was going to add that we make it sound like when you're going through and doing this process of building consensus, we make it sound like it's positive and butterflies and fluffy bunnies, and it's mostly about getting rejected. And that's something I really want to stress, is that if you're pissing people off and people are getting really irritated with you and they're telling you that that's terrible and that's awful, at least they're engaging with you. And basically, once you can get people to engage, that's the first step. If you can get them to listen, even if they end up rejecting your idea, you've had useful feedback. And then you go on to the next iteration. And it's like pounding your head against a wall. As long as your head is harder than the wall, eventually you will win. So don't get discouraged. If it's not going your way, just keep with it. You can build consensus. You have to be willing to accept the fact that the thing that you want to do is not necessarily the thing that Amtgard as a whole wants to do, and you have to be willing to adapt. There are a lot of things over the years that I've tried and gone, you know what? Never mind. As much as I want this is not what Amtgard wants, and that's not the point, is to do the things that I want to do. The point is to do the things that Amtgard wants to do. And that's hard for me. I'm a narcissistic egotist. I want to do what I want to do, and I've got the willpower to back it up, and it's very important for me to be able to take a step back and go, just because I can do this doesn't mean it's a good idea. So I work really hard to build consensus and to accept negative feedback as constructive criticism, and I think that that's integral and required for any part of these processes, and you just have to keep working at it.
I think we sort of hit that point where anything after this is just time filler for time filler, to be quite honest with you. The message got across. I would just ask if there's any last minute takeaways. I think probably the last 20 minutes has been some of the most valuable conversation that could have come from this piece, and I really appreciate that. So again, sticking with the ALU model, any strong takeaways?
So the last 5-7 minutes of conversation is like, if I can impress upon you anything about the future of Amtgard, it is that what Cord started this off with, which is the future of Amtgard is what you make the future of Amtgard. And the reason that the three of us are sitting up here is because we wanted to help, we wanted to effectuate change, and we volunteered our time to do it, and we stood up and said, hey, I can do that, I can help with that. You guys have the ability to do that too, and we are better off as a organization when you engage and when you're not just consumers, but when you're also producers of good things for Amtgard. And so, yeah, we like producing fun rulebooks and battle games and events and all of those things. And that's a lot of what ALU is about. But ALU really is also giving you the tools to make Amtgard what you want it to be. And that's what the future of Amtgard is, what Amtgard wants.
So I'm feeling like I have kind of a favorite phrase that I've used at every single one of these, and I have to figure out a way to actually incorporate that phrase into this. And that phrase is use your words. And if you have an idea, communicate that idea, okay? If you have an idea and you don't tell anybody that idea is never going to come to fruition, okay? So that's how I'm kind of trying to fit that use your words in here, because I really like that phrase. So,
You got it.
so let's go forward.
Brennan, any words to use?
I would say, in the immortal words of Shia LaBeouf and Nike, you should just do it. If you have an idea, just do it. Don't put it off until tomorrow. Don't put it off until next week or next year. Don't look to someone else to make it happen. If you think something's a good idea, and you can do it within the framework of Amtgard, or you can figure out a way to do it within the framework of Amtgard, just do it. If it doesn't work, throw it away and do the other next great idea. And you know what? You're going to be wrong the vast majority of the time, but you only have to be right once.
Fair enough. As always, thank you very much for taking time out of your event. Each of you, this is the second panel for the day, and for you to do that, we greatly appreciate it. So if I could, a quick round of applause for the panel members. Quick round of applause for our amazing volunteers that have been manning the camera. And thank you, the attendants, the audience, both watching online and sitting in here with us today. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your event. Thanks, everybody.